Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Wednesday, April 30th, 2025. Today is day 572. As you looked at Haaretz, the Israeli English newspaper today, Haaretz today had a banner across the top of its news saying, on the 77th Independence Day, Israel is on edge and in flames. A nation mourning its fallen, battling fires, and confronting internal hatred for Israelis' Independence Day arrives under a cloud of smoke and division. When I was in Israel just in the last couple of weeks, there was a conversation among Israelis of diverse, theological and faith traditions, some Jewish Israelis. But there was a conversation within civil society about the possibilities of a civil war brewing within the state, that there's so much division. And I want to read some examples of what that looked like specifically today on the 77th Independence Day of Israel. When the state of Israel was established, Israel was deemed a miracle by the Jewish people. And at the same time, in 1948, was called a Nakba, a catastrophe for the local Palestinians. So this is from Haaretz. It says, if the sky wasn't dark enough, two separate incidents that took place during ceremonies on the eve of Memorial Day added a new layer of tension and distress to the national mood. Reflecting the extent to which the country is on edge, a Tel Aviv ceremony rapidly descended into chaos yesterday, when police confronted three men that were deemed suspicious by a member of the crowd. The disruption sparked rumors that a terrorist incident was underway and gunshots had been fired, which caused frightened onlookers to stampede and flee the area. Videos on social media showed panicked crowds bolting, leaving behind a landscape of overturned chairs and abandoned belongings, and bringing the ceremony to an unexpected end. It then became clear that the men were ushers employed at the event, all wearing yellow vests required by their job. They were Arab Israelis. That means Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel. Even more harrowing and disturbing than the disruption emerged from the usually tranquil suburban city of Ra'anana on the same night. After a day of online incitement by the right-wing activists, these are right-wing Israeli activists, including local politicians representing Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party, a crowd held a demonstration in front of a Reform synagogue, one of the locations screening an alternative joint Israeli-Palestinian Memorial Day ceremony. You might have seen that Churches for Middle East Peace has been advertising this. We've been co-sponsors of the joint memorial ceremony between Israelis and Palestinians for at least the last 5 years. And so that was being screened at a Reform synagogue, and demonstrators attempted to disrupt the event by screaming epithets and using microphones and causing a ruckus. This is literally what Haaretz says. In pogrom-like fashion, the demonstrators attacked the building and tried to assault the frightened attendees. The attendees are primarily Israelis. I mean, there probably were some Palestinians in the room also, but I would imagine that the vast majority couldn't get permits. So the demonstrators attacked the building, trying to assault the frightened attendees as they arrived and departed the screening, and an insufficient number of police officers then attempted to protect them. While it's tragic that a natural disaster could interfere on the day that Israelis spend at cemeteries and ceremonies, mourning their brethren killed in battle or at the hands of terrorists, the smoky black skies and angry orange flames that dominated the day and the headlines felt sadly appropriate given Israel's state on the eve of its independence. That's the end of the Haaretz language. In terms of the physical fire, flames and smoke covered the highway leading in and out of Jerusalem. Cars were ablaze as panicked drivers and passengers abandoned their vehicles and fled. Numerous communities in the hills surrounding the capital were evacuated as wildfires approached. Whipping winds caused the fires to escalate so intensely that the country put out an SOS to nearby countries, including Greece, Croatia, and Cyprus, for material assistance to battle the flames. 2,900 acres are on fire in Israel because of the wildfires. Now, 163 crews battled these fires. This is said to be the largest fire in Israel ever. The IDF is seeking to help. Police are fighting wildfires in the Jerusalem hills as towns are being evacuated. The road between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv closed, and dozens were offered smoke inhalation or suffered smoke inhalation and burns. There was nobody seriously injured. Also in Israel, Netanyahu gave a speech at Mount Herzl honoring Israel's victims who were killed by militants with the terror attacks. Some people in the audience chanted "Resign." One person in the audience waved a blood-stained Israeli flag and shouted at Netanyahu. And another woman shouted, "Our captives are suffering. Save them and release them." This is a bit of a snapshot of what's been happening in Israel the past few days. The U.S. Central Command CENTCOM wished Israelis peace, happiness, and prosperity ahead of Independence Day. And Yehuda Cohen, who's the father of the hostage Nimrod Cohen, said today that far-right extremists in Netanyahu's government are taking advantage of October 7th, quote, to conquer Gaza and establish settlements, end quotes. Yehuda Cohen is not wrong. In terms of the occupied West Bank, if you think Israel is divided and there's chaos, listen to the havoc being wreaked among Palestinians living in the occupied territory, East Jerusalem, the West Bank, and Gaza. The Israeli army carried out raids in the occupied West Bank, including in the town of Beita, which is south of Nablus. Settlers set Palestinian and agricultural land on fire in the West Bank, according to security sources. And one of the most critical roles that the U.S. plays is through the Office of General Fensel, who leads the U.S. security coordination in Jerusalem. This helps bolster security coordination between Israelis and the Palestinian Authority. And it was announced yesterday in the Times of Israel that the U.S. plans to eliminate the security post with the task, that bolsters the security post bolsters Israeli and PA security ties. The U.S. says the move is not final, but they acknowledge that the office of the three-star General Fensel in Jerusalem is currently on the chopping block as a part of a State Department reorganization. There were conversations previously under the Biden administration about cutting this office, but ultimately the decision to close the office was reversed under Biden. Mike Waltz, who's now the U.S. National Security Advisor, defended keeping a high-ranked general at the USSC in the Jerusalem office. But the U.S. was swayed by Israel, which cautioned against destabilizing the situation. If this office is shut down, it's one of the most stabilizing offices and a constructive role that the U.S. plays. And I've worked with General Fensel's office. He has intervened on behalf of Bedouins that were being attacked by settlers. They've done really incredible work. This is the office that gave the data that led to extremist settlers being put on the sanctions list under the Biden administration. The more official report is that Rubio's weighing the possibility of eliminating the U.S. security coordinator position for the West Bank and Gaza as a part of a broader restructuring of diplomatic personnel for the State Department. The position, typically held by a three-star general, plays a key role in facilitating this coordination between Israelis and Palestinians, both political and militarily, to manage and prevent security crises. Sources told Axios that removing the coordinator could risk further destabilizing the region, particularly as the conflict in Gaza continues. In Gaza, the siege against the people of Gaza has reached its 60th day as the United States defended Israel at the International Court of Justice. No food, water, or medical supplies have been allowed to enter the Strip since March 2nd. Before Israel broke the ceasefire on March 18th to restart bombardments and ground assaults that have killed more than 52,000. That's the official number, is 52,000 Palestinians killed since October 7th, 2023. According to Al Jazeera, people in Gaza are relying on aid supplies. Farmers, breeders, they can't access their land. What of it is not utterly destroyed or scorched? 70% of the enclave has been designated a no-go area or is under displacement orders. The remaining soup kitchens in Gaza say that they will have to shut down within days unless aid is allowed in. The enclave is on the precipice of famine. As a result, families are resorting to eat whatever they can find, even when it's not safe for consumption. And all the while, aid trucks, miles and miles of aid trucks, are stuck at the border waiting to enter into Gaza. In the last 24 hours, we know at least 35 Palestinians were killed. This included a strike on a building in the Nusrat refugee camp that residents said felt like an earthquake. The U.S. defended Israel on the third day of hearings at the ICJ on the country's obligations as an occupying power, and Israeli airstrikes on homes in central Gaza killed at least 12 people, including 3 children. The Israeli military has released a Palestinian paramedic who'd been detained when Israeli soldiers killed 15 other emergency workers in South Gaza last month, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society. There was an Israeli strike on the outskirts of the Syrian capital of Damascus today. It killed 1 member of Syria's new security forces. The IDF said they were targeting operatives who had attacked Druze civilians. And the IDF said in a statement today that 3 Syrian Druze citizens were evacuated to Israel to receive medical treatment. Residents in Syria are saying that there are fighter jets flying over Damascus. And Syria says it rejects foreign intervention, quote, after the Israeli strike happened near Damascus. The Syrian ministry did not explicitly mention Israel, but referred to what it said were calls by outlawed groups that engaged in violence in the country. There were deadly sectarian clashes that erupted on the outskirts of Damascus, which killed at least 12 people. The fighting came after an audio clip, which was circulated on social media, was of a man insulting Prophet Muhammad, and it was attributed to a cleric in the minority Druze sect. The Syrian Interior Ministry has urged for calm and said its findings show that the cleric was not responsible. Syria's Foreign Minister Assad al-Shabani actually met with senior State Department officials yesterday in New York City. The meeting, which was the first between U.S. officials and Shabani on U.S. soil, comes as Damascus pushes for a definitive plan from Washington outlining the steps required for permanent sanctions relief. A State Department spokesperson confirmed the meeting, saying it continues to assess Syrian policy cautiously. In Yemen, the British Air Force joined the U.S. for the first time attacking Houthi targets. This was alongside the U.S. Air Force. The U.K. Foreign Minister Healy said the strikes were in response to a persistent threat from Houthis to the freedom of navigation. The Houthis say they targeted military sites in Tel Aviv and a U.S. aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea, vowing to continue their attacks until the war on Gaza ends. Trump is privately and publicly urging Egypt to compensate the U.S. for its efforts to protect the shipping lanes leading to the Suez Canal from Houthi attacks. The push mirrors the administration's broader strategy of seeking financial benefits from its foreign policy actions. This has been seen in the Ukraine and in Gaza. Iranian officials investigating Saturday's explosion of Tehran's biggest port, which killed 70 people, said that they found false statements in the documentation for the cargo shipment that was believed to have triggered the blast. They did not specify the details. They were classified as a container holding ordinary goods, should have been identified as a shipment carrying dangerous substances. Just a couple quick updates in terms of the U.S. Harvard President Alan Garber has issued an apology following the release of those internal reports I was talking about, indicating anti-Semitic and anti-Muslim bias at the institution. The reports featured testimonies from students who shared their feelings of alienation and pressure to hide their identities from both peers and faculty. In response, Harvard said it would review its academic programs and admissions policies, addressing a key request from the White House, which is accusing the university of not effectively combating anti-Semitism on campus. Defense Secretary Hegseth is supporting a Navy admiral as his preferred candidate to lead the U.S. military operations in the Middle East. This is bypassing an Army general long seen as the frontrunner for the post, according to defense officials. The recommendation will be reviewed by Trump, who will submit a nomination to the Senate for the role. The White House also dismissed several formal Biden appointees from the board of the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. This includes the former second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and is currently vetting replacements, according to an administration official. Confirming the news, Emhoff said, "Let me be clear, Holocaust remembrance and education must never be politicized." The removed officials also include the former Biden White House officials Susan Rice, Ron Klain, and Anthony Bernal, as well as the former DNC chair Tom Perez. A lawsuit alleging that the Trump administration is deporting people for holding pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel views can proceed to trial, a federal judge ruled yesterday, stating that the academic groups who challenged the practice had plausibly alleged that their members were being targeted specifically for exercising their rights for political free speech. A federal judge in Vermont today ordered the release of Mohsen Madawi, This is the Palestinian Columbia University student who's a lawful U.S. resident who the Trump administration detained despite there being no criminal charges. It's nice to have some good news. Madawi, who was arrested by ICE earlier this month during a naturalization interview, addressed supporters outside of the Vermont courtroom. He was wearing a keffiyeh. This is a light of hope and faith in the justice system in America, he said. No one of us is free unless we all are. His detention was one of several recent arrests of pro-Palestinian international student activists as a part of the pro-Palestine crackdown on campuses. The Trump administration has invoked a rare provision allowing the Secretary of State to revoke visas and residency for individuals who are deemed a threat to U.S. foreign policy. The judge said Madawi poses no flight risk and should remain in Vermont, where he has a home and attends school remotely. He's allowed to travel to New York City to meet with his lawyers and to visit Columbia. That's more than enough news for the day. Might we rest on the promise that God is with us, even in the midst of the chaos. May God go before us in our efforts towards peace. Amen.